We are
Did you
now
know
back
that
on the
grass
record, and we
clippings
will
contain
recall our normal meeting and call item number 12A.
Department and Committee reports, non-action items. El Paso County Water Master Plan, a request by the El Paso County Planning and Community Development Department to update the Board of County Commissioners on the development and adoption of the Water Master Plan as an element of the El Paso County Master Plan. Craig Dawsey, Executive Director, PCD, and Mark Gebhardt, Deputy Director, PCD.
Good morning again, Mr. President. Good morning, Board of County Commissioners. We appreciate you giving us the opportunity to update you on the progress of the Water Master Plan. As you know, or maybe don't know, a couple weeks ago we had our public open house that was held over at the Regional Development Center. I think the turnout, considering it was a Thursday evening, was pretty good. It was in excess of 60 people. We started this process, if you recall, a little over a year ago, and this is the precursor to what you just approved earlier that I spoke to, which is the overall land use master plan. Very.
But the overhead? Yeah, just the agenda item?
Yeah, we can just switch over to the desktop.
Okay. There we go.
So I'm gonna get out of the way here and let Mark do the talking, as he was the project manager for the department. But we are very excited to be presenting this to you today. It's still in draft form. We're still taking comments from the public, but we are planning on taking the Water Master Plan to the Planning Commission, which is the final approval authority under state statute. We're planning on taking that to them in December. So we're excited to be here today and update you on what we've been doing so far. Mark Gebhardt will be doing the presentation. We also have Jonathan Moore, who is with Forsgren Associates, who was the primary consultant that worked on this project. So unless you have any questions for me, I will turn it over to Mark.
Okay.
Mark Gebhardt, Planning Community Development. As Mr. Dawsey noted, this is a long-term plan. We've been in this process for more than a year to update the Water Master Plan. The County Master Plan has a series of topical elements and small area elements. This would be a topical element of that plan to be adopted by the Planning Commission. I'll show you a schedule at how that Planning Commission action would occur. This is the third draft version. We've done an internal version. We've processed this through a steering committee that's recommended it go forward. Then we received a revision to it. I provided you a copy of those revisions, and hopefully you have those on your desk last Wednesday morning. The purpose of the plan, as we've identified, that's a part of the slide that you previously had up on the screen, there's a series of purposes. One of the challenges is the public doesn't fully understand the water circumstances necessarily surrounding their property. And the purpose of this is to provide the public more information, provide the Planning Commission more information, and also be a basis for review of those documents as they go forward as a hearing-based documents, either a zoning, subdivision, or other actions, or a 1041 land use approval under our areas and activities of state interest. So these were the original targets to accomplish through the master plan. And one of the important things that we bring forward is the target to review of 1041 and other utility applications. That's both a staff level decision and a board level decision, and to implement aspects of the Colorado's water plan. I bring that up in part of one of our steering committee members, who will speak in just a second, is a part of the Arkansas Basin Roundtable and participates with that Arkansas or that Colorado water plan, and how this document then relates to that overall water plan for the state of Colorado. Our schedule going backwards and forwards, as we noted, we had probably 60 people had signed up at the stationing at the open house. And one of the things we did with that open house is we asked people to mark on a map where they were from. And whether it's happenstance The Board of Commissioners had a controversial land use hearing that prior week. Most of the folks were from the northeast part of the county, Black Forest, north part of the county, a few from the south. You've got several people here in the audience today that were present there as the public for that. We didn't have any really from the southeast. We had one person from the southeast portion of the county, a couple people from Cherokee, nobody really, I think, from down on Highway 115. The notice for the master plan and the open house went to a master list that we'd created originally, developed for input into the overall plan, which included over 50 special districts or water suppliers to try to spread the word to come to this open house meeting. So it'd been great if we'd had more, but we had a lot more than I thought we would end up having. The schedule here is provided. We have this original map showed the 13th, the 8th, that actually became today's meeting to update the board. Then we have by statute 2 planning commission hearings that are scheduled and will be scheduled now for the December. I don't know that we want to get into too much detail, and the consultant here can prepare or go into this greater. Yes, at the very start of the process, there was a fairly aggressive public feedback process to try to solicit input into the overall goals of the master plan. There was a very comprehensive metro scan survey that went out that we included all the water districts, all the 50-some providers, the water districts. Many of them placed that on their websites to help us. The steering committee solicited input from all their entities, including Upper Black Squirrel and other districts. We placed it on our website, and I believe it was on the commissioner's website for a time period as well, to try to steer people to this document to see what they were interested in, because then that became the rest of the master plan. Where do you go forward once you find what that background interest people have? We did have 374 responses that were independent responses. We expected 200. We got double that amount, and we had over 1,000 hits on the webpage to try to find information out about the water plan. With a series of questions people ask, we were trying to find what was important to them in the water plan, such as, and I'm not sure it's up here, but one of the issues became renewable versus Denver Basin groundwater. Ask them what was interested to them. And there was some interesting outcomes in some of those discussions that are in the overall report. One of the points that we mentioned, and we brought a specific slide up at the open house, was how much do people really understand about their aquifer in the Denver Basin if they're on wells? And what do they understand if there are central suppliers in the Denver Basin on wells? That single location had the most comments coming from the citizens, primarily because they were on wells and what that means to them. Part of the process in the master plan is to try to provide a certain amount of education to those people. Some of this is repetitive in various other documents, and these documents here and here both come out of other statewide publications. But what it's important to do is to show that many of the people in Black Forest utilize the Dawson Aquifer as their primary source. In general, there are potentially other aquifers below them, but it's to understand whether those aquifers are available to those people and what it would cost as a part of their development if they needed to go to those other aquifers. The importance of this drawing here became, and the report addresses that, as you utilize bedrock groundwater, you have a influence area, and you have to keep drilling more wells to ultimately produce that same amount of water that you previously used, because those wells interact with each other. It costs a huge amount to go to that same level and keep drilling, and you're going to keep reducing your quantities of water. The engineer can here explain that in much greater detail, but the importance in some of the discussion is the question whether should these entities that provide central water supply systems for the area continue to rely on bedrock groundwater rather than search for renewable water to try to achieve their goals. The report does provide some information relative to renewable water supply. The issue on renewable water supply is where do you get it from, how much does it cost, and is it available in any case at all? And how do you get there? These are out of some state publications, et cetera. So there is a section on renewable water supply in the overall water plan. Looking at that one very closely. That's an interesting drawing to look at. So part of the effort of the overall master plan is, as Mr. Dossi noted, we have master plan actions going back to the 80s, the 70s time period. None of those have any comprehensive growth planning effort. What are we predicting for growth? The document that does provide that is the Major Transportation Corridor Plan, which is a very important document of where to plan for that growth and how much growth is going to occur. We reiterated or redid a part of that Major Transportation Corridor Plan with this document to try to figure out where that growth would occur, including some specific areas. What the drawing here effectively shows is almost everything in purple is City of Colorado Springs or provided some form by the City of Colorado Springs. And we tried to break down the areas then and then predict growth within those areas based upon where their water supply was coming from, including the upper Black Squirrel, the northern portion of the county. And that helped then lead to those projections for land use growth. One of the things that we'll ultimately do in the new master plan is further that land use aspect of population projections. One of the slides we presented at the open house was this drawing, and it received a great amount of interest. This involved some aspects of either the City of Colorado Springs planning or the upper monument planning for how growth would occur in the upper monument area to bring water potentially up north to Denola, to Triview, to those districts in the northern part of the county. That is a specific subsection of the overall master plan. I don't want to go into that in great detail. People always have questions of how does reuse work. That's an interesting challenge that's occurring. You may not realize that water is currently being reused by City of Colorado Springs. Water is being reused by Cherokee Metro District and reinjected in Black Squirrel. Water reuse is a subject of a lot of discussion in the northern part of the county, especially Monument Triview area. This goes on the discussion of what's yucky, but I think if you counted the water reuse, you may get, I think, up to 7 times by the lower Arkansas River down La Junta area that's been through various treatment plants or agricultural functions or functions to get to that end result. So there's a specific chapter on water reuse in there. We currently utilize a 300-year water supply requirement that's different from the state requirement. It's much more stringent, and it applies to certain bedrock aquifers and doesn't apply to renewable aquifers such as Black Forest and Black Squirrel Creek and the Lower Fountain area. One of the things in the master plan that we tried to look at is, and you saw earlier, there's various publications that go on water and land use, on comprehensive planning and land uses. There's all sorts of documents at how to reduce your water demand and try to make the most out of your own water. Some of the policies within this water master plan are tried to gear towards those. The challenge is that the county doesn't own the water supply. The county can't really tell the districts how to do it, but we can support those districts that do improve their water efficiency and have water conservation plans. So what are the next steps? We went through a steering committee. First, we created the process. We went to see what the public wanted. We went through a steering committee. We've drafted a report. We're taking forward that report to the Planning Commission, which does include recommendations, which would then become the basis of review of applications going forward. We do anticipate the potential for some modifications to our land use regulations, landscaping regulations. One of the challenges in our landscaping regulations is they're uniform throughout the county. Well, that's great, but the climate is not uniform throughout the county, and we'd like to make some modifications of those and to accomplish some alternate landscape provisions and more xeric provisions in our landscaping standards. Yet again, that's for commercial and industrial development, not residential development necessarily. There will be some discussion potentially of the 300-year water regulation in the future. That's not today's topic. That's not the topic of this master plan yet, but it will lead to that future discussion. And then there will need to be some discussion potentially, the current process deals with water sufficiency at the final plat stage or the final development process. Are there ways to accomplish that at a different stage of development that don't violate state statute or state laws to have a better decision-making process for the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners? And then we are updating, again, the overall master plan, which was on your agenda today. The board received a comment on or a copy of the master plan. We've sent out for public review. It's been out for public review now. We're starting to see some comments from review entities or people that are interested. This is a comment from Mike Fink, who is on the steering committee representing City of Fountain. As you're reading it, I don't mean to pull it off your eyebrows. That will be a part of the overall effort of trying to carry this forward, as all those comments will be carried forward as a part of the overall planning process. Additionally, some other districts have provided comments and will be providing comments. We sent it out to all the review entities, including the military bases as well, who have been a part of our overall steering committees. We've had a relationship that the joint, the Pikes Peak Area Council Government group has been participating in some of the efforts, and the military bases have been participating as well. The last part of the discussion is, and I had mentioned previously in the audience also, is Gary Barber, who is a representative of the Arkansas Basin Roundtable, who's been a part of our steering committee and is in support of this project as well. That would conclude my presentation. Is there anything specifically needed?
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I did attend the open house, and so I thought it was really good to see the numbers of people out there. And even though I wasn't an expert, I had a lot of people come up to me and ask me questions and actually give me some feedback. So one of the things I thought was an interesting question, which I quickly directed them to put it down in the recommendations write-ups, was are there wells that are monitored for the level of water in that aquifer? And why I bring that up, it seems that a lot of times we're told, well, that's in this report. Well, that report's 8 or 10 years old, and what I did see on some of these reports, well, 30, 40 years ago, the aquifers were drastically going down, and then recently, last decade or so, or kind of leveled off with a slight decrease. But in these master plans, can we direct these districts, water districts, large developments to have a well that can be monitored? Because it seems that we sometimes lack information about, well, are the aquifers going down or are they stabilized? And if we can't answer that question, how do we make a good decision on whether certain areas of the county need to have less density or higher density, or or less development that draws from the aquifers. And it seems that we do have a lack of information. Is that going to be addressed in here? Are we going to be able to direct metro water districts to do that? Or would we put some wells in throughout the county that allows us to look into that?
Probably all of the above, but I'll let the engineer explain that in a little more detail about well drawdowns. But I think what you're pointing out is there's a lack of comprehensive evaluation of level drawdowns in the aquifers. The drawdowns related to commercial wells will be much more significant than those for residential wells because they're not hitting the water that hard and pulling it out. But there is no, and that could be a recommendation that could come out of the overall planning process, is to try to accomplish a drawdown, or a monitoring of it. It's very similar to what you're participating in with the upper black squirrel, which is a quality level discussion, not necessarily a quantity level at where those fit.
And what I would just, as we do this, look at what options do we have to make that available? Because honestly, we get into these discussions and we have no quantitative data on is there enough water to support the growing or the growth of the county in certain areas. And if we can't answer that, then we're stuck kind of guessing. And I just want to make sure that we are able to address that in the future.
I think that's a great question, Commissioner Gonzalez. As Mark pointed out, one of the opportunities that we have with now making the water master plan, hopefully if the Planning Commission adopts it, part of the overall master plan, if you recall, when you all review zoning and sketch plan applications, but also when you review 1041 applications, you will be asked to determine whether or not it's consistent with the master plan, which now means, is it consistent with the water master plan? At that stage, you would have the opportunity to put a requirement in potentially that a metro district that's proposing, let's say, a new well or a new water line or a new holding tank or whatever that triggers a 1041 application, you could put the requirement in there that they also provide monitoring data of those wells. So that opportunity is very real, but I don't think it's very real today because we don't have the data that we're going to get with the water master plan that kind of supports asking for that when that 1041 application comes before you. So that it is a very real opportunity moving forward now that we have this in place as an element of the overall master plan.
And I'd like to see those recommendations at least offered to us so we can, on the large developments that can afford to have maybe perhaps have a monitoring well.
Absolutely, and if you would all agree, my plan moving forward is every time we write a staff report for a sketch plan or a rezone or a 1041 application, there's going to be a section in there that talks about consistency specifically with the water master plan so that we can have those discussions at that stage of development.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I appreciate kind of the quick update here. Good information. And, you know, one of the things that I seem to have an understanding on here is that we do rely a lot on the state water engineers for determining sufficiency and these kinds of things. But I don't know that perhaps this is done at a different level in the county, but I think, at least for me, I don't really ever see from them kind of the strategic determinations that they're making kind of at a statewide level because, say, for example, these aquifers in Black Forest, there are several communities drawing from those. So, you know, what I don't have a good understanding of is there a lot being drawn from several different places, and are they actually truly coordinating those things at the state level so that they're making a good determination? And that I do worry about that, honestly. So you had mentioned in one of the charts about increased interaction with the state with regard to this water master plan, and I think that's real important. I'd be interested in getting, you know, a better understanding from the state about what they're actually doing so that I can have better confidence in addressing the questions about water sufficiency.
And Commissioner Vanderwerf, I think we had talked about it before. My goal, once we get kind of through this process, is I would like to have the state engineer's office come down and do a presentation to the board. Commissioner Glenn, not that it would be a lost cause on you, but maybe once the new board takes their seat, I think it's an excellent opportunity, one, for an education for the new board members, but also probably an education for the other three of you as to what the review looks like and how are they getting to a point of finding that there's adequate water for development. And then perhaps Mr. Emmons can also follow that up with a presentation how he does his evaluation based upon the county's 300-year rule. I think that would be a really good opportunity to educate probably all 5 commissioners and as well as the Planning Commission as to how we get to that point. Obviously, a lot of times it probably feels like you're just kind of getting the answer and not the equation. It would be nice to be able to provide an explanation of that equation. So I would like to try to coordinate that hopefully after the end of the year.
The state engineer's office was present at the open house, and I spoke to them specifically, and they offered to come down and speak to the board on that very topic.
Any other comments, questions? Any questions from the audience on this? All right, Gary.
Morning, Commissioners. Gary Barbaro is part of the steering committee. I'll give you a little background, but first I'll say that this water stuff's very counterintuitive, and so you got to kind of roll with that as you talk about it. 2002, I became the manager of what's now called the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority. In those days, it was the El Paso County Water Authority. 2003, the state started the statewide water supply initiative to ask the question, how are we doing on water? Do we have enough? And they projected growth out to 2040. What they came up with was that by the year 2040, the Front Range would be 300,000 to 400,000 acre feet short. And to put that in context, Colorado Springs today serves about 85,000 acre feet a year. Denver serves about 300,000 acre feet a year. So enough water for another Denver. And then the tension there is, are you going to dry up all your agriculture, which still uses 85% of the water, to grow your cities? And so that tension led in 2005 to the Water for the 21st Century Act, created the roundtable process. I became involved on behalf of El Paso County and the Arkansas Basin Roundtable. So it was really a grassroots sort of bottom-up approach to it. In 2013, the governor and the Colorado Water Conservation Board, which was formed in 1937 as sort of the oversight committee, the senior policy board for water, issued an executive order to create a Colorado water plan. Each basin was required to come up with a basin plan. And the purpose behind the roundtables was to propose projects and methods to meet the needs of your basin. And every basin has different needs. The Gunnison River, the Yampa River is very different than the Arkansas. So I stepped off the roundtable and became the project manager and brought the Arkansas Basin Plan to closure in 2015, and then that became part of the Colorado Water Plan. And since then, I've been working for the roundtable doing grants. So as a member of the steering committee, part of what we did is the Colorado Water Conservation Board has Colorado Water Plan grants, one of which is called a supply and demand gap grant. So we've obtained, approved in May, pointing to this water master plan as a match that will do a Colorado Water Plan supply and demand gap grant. And what we'll look at with U.S. Geological Survey is the current status of the Denver Basin aquifers and some projection or proposal to carry that forward to see where they're going next. The sort of financial and wherewithal of the various small districts to participate in some kind of regional solution, how we interface with Colorado Springs utilities, how we do more reuse, and then finally how we might be able to do storage in the aquifers to get even more efficiency and long-term use out of the water rights. So that all will take place over about the next 6 months, and it's built on this foundation. The reason we were able to get support for that grant through the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority was because down at the Arkansas Basin Roundtable, where grants get processed, about 2 years ago, they said, don't come back until you link water planning with land use planning, right? The water guys say, we're not in the land use business. The land use folks say, we're not in the water business. And that separation creates a tension for folks to say, why are you coming down here asking for more grant money when you haven't made that connection? So I think it's really important that you see this water master plan as a foundation or a cornerstone piece for land use planning, and then we'll take it another step in terms of a water supply grant to try to put more detail and be able to answer some of your questions. So appreciate being a participant and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, very good. Any other department and committee reports? Oh, you're coming forward.
I don't have any more reports, but I do have little business cards. A couple of weeks ago, I did a presentation on our Muni code, our land development code that's online. This is a step-by-step of how to get there and how to search it. So I'll be handing you out each one. If you'd like more than one, I'd be happy to give you those. But I just wanted to follow up. I told you we made these, but I didn't have it with me that day, so here they are.
Very good.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.